It's that special time of year. Temperatures are cooling off. EJ's raking leaves in his yard every single day because there's an infinite supply. And the playoff picture is finally starting to come into focus. It's still a little bit off in the distance. You still can't entirely make it out, but we have a pretty good idea of who's going to be playing in January and who's not. And there are several games this week that are going to dramatically impact playoff seeding. Hell, it's probably going to dramatically impact who even makes the playoffs. You know, if you're looking at Cincinnati there playing on Sunday night. So we have a few really, really huge matchups to talk about this week that are also going to be good springboards for where these teams are as a whole. But before we get to that, EJ, my friend, how are you?
I'm good. The weather has turned. Football gets to turn too. We're now into division play, so things start to count twice. And lots of games that I think this week the theme is games that a month ago weren't really a thing and now are like really compelling for a bunch of different reasons. So it's going to be a good slate, going to be a good show.
Or games that, you know, maybe haven't been, I mean, they've been compelling, but maybe haven't had like the highest stakes that we're used to, like say Ravens Steelers. This one does have a lot of high stakes though. And it's been a while since, you know, we've seen the peak of this rivalry, kind of the late 2010s or late 2000s, early 2010s, you know, when these teams were fighting for the Super Bowl every single year. It's been a while since both of them have been true contenders at the same time. And right now, you've got the 7-2 Steelers and the 7-3 Ravens going at it. It's a 10 a.m. game our time, which also kind of feels weird. Used to this being like a Sunday night type of affair. But I think that goes to show the NFL didn't expect this to be a super high stakes game this year. And it just kind of ended up being one. But again, this is going to go a long way to determining who wins the AFC North and where all these teams are going to be stacked. Now, when I look at this game, it does kind of feel a little, actually, no, it feels a lot of it different than, maybe previous iterations of this matchup, because we're used to this being like a hard hitting, defensive battle. Ed Reed's on the field, Troy's on the field, James Harris and Terrell Suggs, Lodi Nada. Yeah, one of these defenses sucks. I'm sorry. It's not good. The Ravens pass defense is arguably the worst in the NFL. And those are words that I don't think have ever been said before. I literally don't think that's ever happened in franchise history of them being like bottom four in pass defense. But here we are. And so when I look at this matchup, it's not just about, okay, which defense is going to perform the best. It's just, can the Ravens survive like just long enough defensively for Lamar to win this game? Because if they go out there and they do what they've done the entire year, which is give up long balls down the sidelines, they have the most targets on deep balls, 20 plus yards down the field outside the numbers in the entire NFL. They've also given up the third most completions, and they've given up the most touchdowns on go balls. If they go out there and do that again against the Steelers with Russ, who's really good at throwing those kind of balls outside with moon balls to George Pickens and Mike Williams, all of a sudden you're looking at Lamar having to score on basically every single possession against a really good Steelers defense just to win this game. So it's kind of an asymmetric matchup, which we're not used to when these two teams get together. But at the same time, that might make it kind of fun.
I think Russ makes this game fun. And if you'd asked me to say that a month ago, I would have washed my mouth out with soap. But he's playing some of the classic hit you where it hurts football. It's working perfectly with the way Tomlin has built this team. And did I see that coming? I did not. Mea culpa. No way. I thought Russ was out of juice. We saw a little bit of life out of him in Denver in his second year, but then it really fell off, and I thought, that's it. That's the ledge. However, it's not a volume thing. It's high leverage shots that, like you talked about, down the field in just the right moments to one of the best down the field receivers in the game right now. I was going to ask you this. If you had to take a shot outside the numbers and you could pick, anybody in the league right now, how many receivers are you taking above George Pickens just for that route?
Literally just Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, and that might be it.
Right.
That might be it.
Easily within the top 5 in this category. He's probably, like you said, top 3 And on certain weeks, he looks to be top one. That ball goes up outside the numbers. He is not losing it, period. He is a dog. We've seen some amazing catches from him. You can say what you want about some other holes in his game, but it doesn't matter because those are the shots they're taking. If you look at volume, Russ's volume stats are not great, but it doesn't matter because you've got that revamped, retooled offensive line powering the run game, which is a sort of classic Steelers staple. You've got a bruise them up defense, and now 3-4 times a game, they can poke you for 20, 30, 45 yards down the field. And that piece, that one explosive element that was missing from their offense has been the key that has unlocked this team since Russ took over as the starting quarterback. It's crazy, and that is terrible news for this Ravens pass defense. Still on the struggle bus, giving up almost 300 yards a game on the season and fresh off allowing 421 to the Bengals and Joe Burrow. And here comes Russ saying, yeah, I love throwing that pass. Let's do it some more. Give me Braden Stevens all day long. It's not going to be great. Weirdly, the Ravens have the number one rushing defense if you're talking about yards allowed, only 73 per game. So this is a Jekyll and Hyde unit, and in fact, a Jekyll and Hyde team. It is the best passing offense in the league, and it's not close. They are 30 yards ahead of the next closest team. 440 yards a game for the Ravens, 412 for San Francisco. You don't usually see that big of a gap at the top of the stats. Deontay Johnson return game adds a little bit of spark, but I think that would have been the headliner a month ago, and now it's just like a side dish in this main course football game of high-powered Ravens offense that's putting up a ton of yards through the air. Lamar is playing at an MVP level. There's no other way to say it. And suddenly the Steelers look competitive with that because they have one thing that was missing, and they can poke the Ravens right where it hurts, and that makes this game fascinating.
There's kind of a matchup within the matchup here that, you know, when it comes to the Ravens offense trying to keep pace with the Steelers offense, or really you would think it'd be the other way around, but the Ravens defense is so bad that that's kind of what it's going to be, right? If you look at Roger Rosengarten, who's the Ravens rookie right tackle, he's actually had a really good year. Like by rookie right tackle standards, he's had a really good year. He's given up the most pressures on the team, but also you kind of expect that because he's a rookie. The one area where he's been vulnerable, and I mean like truly vulnerable, where it's like, hey, I can count on this to get it done against Roger Rosengarten to get pressure, is power. He doesn't have a great anchor. He's got good feet. He's got good hands. Very adept at handling finesse style moves. But you can run through his chest, right? I look at the Steelers' edge rush rotation, and Alex Highsmith is going to be missing this game with a really nasty looking low ankle sprain, you know, where he stepped on somebody's foot last week and it rolled in a really awkward way. Nick Herbig's coming in, and Herbig actually, believe it or not, has the highest pass rush win rate and the highest pressure rate out of all their edge rushers, even over TJ. TJ's at about 15%, Herbig's at about 20%. So again, it's less snaps, but there's a pretty sizable gap in efficiency there. So like in theory, the Steelers' edge rotation should be fine. Their pass rush should be fine. But neither of those guys, Watt or Herbig, kind of make their money with power, right? It's more about blistering speed, you know, having flexibility and bend, and TJ just times the snap better than anybody. But they don't necessarily run through you. So what I'm really curious about here is, does Rosengarten kind of get a break this week because the one thing he's not good at is also the one thing the Steelers' edge rotation doesn't really do? Or do they try to take advantage of that by not necessarily having TJ go against Rosengarten one-on-one, but rather trying to set it up with stunts and games and everything like that, where you can get Cam Hayward slamming into him from the side and absolutely dumpstering him, right? Because we've seen that work pretty frequently as well. Cleveland did it like 3 times against him. So like I think there is room here to pick on Rosengarten and get Lamar uncomfortable, but it's just kind of a weirdly favorable matchup for him as far as these one-on-ones go. I would also say it's a weirdly favorable matchup for the Ravens run defense. Like you said, they have one of the best run defenses in the NFL, in particular against outside zone, which the Steelers run at a very high clip, like a top 10 rate of outside zone in the NFL. The Ravens only allow 3.6 yards per carry against outside zone. They're very, very good at it. So this is going to end up, in all likelihood, being a Russ, George, Mike, like, please save us, with these deep balls down the sideline. Like, I think it's going to be kind of a slow, not meandering. What's the word? I think it's going to be kind of a rough game to watch until the big plays start happening. And I'm counting on those big plays happening, but like the every down success and efficiency, I don't think is going to be there. Like, I think both of these teams are going to struggle with each other based on these matchups. And then you're going to see like a 30-yard chunk here, a 25-yard chunk there, and all of a sudden it's going to be like 24-20, right? Like, it's going to be a weird but weirdly entertaining game for that reason. One more note. Steelers against mobile quarterbacks. The Steelers' defense, with all their speed and all their range, is one of the best in terms of corralling quarterbacks that have mobility as an element to their game. They've only allowed 61 rushing yards the entire year to quarterbacks. And keep in mind, they've played Anthony Richardson, Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, Daniel Jones, and Justin Herbert. And against Jaden Daniels, Daniel Jones, and Herbert combined, they allowed 6 yards against those guys. So if there's any team that's built to take away the mobility of Lamar, or at least to limit the ability of Lamar, it might be this one, which again kind of creates a potential for this to be a slow starter of a game that just ends up being a barn burner by the fourth quarter. As for who's going to win, God, I thought I had the confidence to fuck it. Steelers. I'm going to say Steelers win because I really hate picking against the Ravens. I really hate picking against Lamar. But at the same time, the Steelers are like the one team that it feels like the Ravens like consistently play their worst football against. And I kind of think that might happen again.
This is always a slugfest in weird ways. And we can sit here and just did talk about the ways we think it's going to go. And then, a funny thing happens on the way to playing football on grass on Sundays. And I think you're right that a lot of this will be contained in the first quarter and even in the first half, probably. There's going to be a bunch of Derrick Henry rushes into a very stout Steelers defense. There's going to be a bunch of, shutdown of this mock and passing game. He'll get some pieces, but I don't expect big bursts because the Pittsburgh defense is very good at limiting big plays. And, if we see early, big down the field shots from the Steelers, which I don't think we will, I think there'll be a sort of feeling out period like there always is in these games. It's going to be really about second half adjustments and seeing if Henry can break those runs, because that's typically when he does it, is mid-third quarter to fourth quarter after they've been banging away for the whole game. And all of a sudden, got a crack, got 20 yards there. Ooh, that looks different. We've been seeing, 2 and 3. Same thing with Lamar. They've been very good against mobile quarterbacks, but Lamar's Lamar. He's the best one. Is he going to get one, 35-yard explosive rush? He might. Would I want to bet on that? I wouldn't. So it's going to be really interesting to see. It's going to come down. It's going to be a really close game. I'm just going to flip a coin. I think the Steelers can win it, which, again, a month ago, I never would have said that. If you'd asked me to bet on this game a month ago, I would have been like, yeah, Ravens, not close. Now I'm like, I think the Steelers could legitimately take a win here, and I don't even really want to call it stealing.
Before I get to Falcons Broncos, by the way, I do want to thank Underdog Fantasy for making this show possible in the first place. If you've been playing Pick'ems with us all season long, you know the drill by now. If you have not played Pick'ems with us, this is a damn good week to start, because your free pick special as a new customer on Underdog for both today and tomorrow, which should be coming out on Friday. So today and tomorrow, it's going to be Wemby, who, by the way, just put up 50 points last night when we were recording this at 8 a.m. on Thursday. Put up 50 last night with 8 threes, and he's 7-3, guys. So he's kind of a freak of nature. So if you think that somebody that just got 50 can get half a point as your free pick special over the next 2 days, you can find that at Underdog Fantasy right now. And then on Sunday, Aaron Rodgers may not be having a good year, but we think he can get at least a yard. That is your Sunday free pick special as well. So if you haven't played Pick'ems with us this year, again, you can fill out anything from 3 to 5 players. You go higher or lower on a bunch of different statistical categories, who's going to have a good day, who's going to have a bad day. Your payout increases with each additional name, but you can make it a little bit easier on yourself by having those free pick specials in there. You can find that at the link in the description below or at the QR code on the screen. Promo code BOOTLEG, you get up to $1,000 in deposit bonuses and those free pick specials. Thank you once again to Underdog for making this show possible, for supporting us this entire year, and being our frontline sponsor. Couldn't do this without you guys. Now, Falcons, Broncos. Sneaky fun game between two teams who very easily could be playing January football. I don't think the Broncos are going to win the division. The Falcons might, but the Broncos are in the driver's seat to sneak in as a wild card here. Actually, not even sneak in. They'd be barging in as a wild card because this defense is elite in, I don't know, every single category that matters. Their young quarterback is improving every single week. He's still not all the way there yet, but he is not a liability anymore. So I look at a very balanced team. I look at I don't want to say surprisingly well coached, but they're more well coached now than they were 2 months ago on the offensive side. And on the defensive side, they are just flat out diabolical. Like, this is a complete football team going against a Falcons team that is not complete, but they are weirdly effective just because of the strengths that they do have. They have a lot of weaknesses, don't get me wrong. Like, their defensive line is so bad. It's literally the worst pass rush in the NFL going against the best pass rush in the NFL in Denver. But I'll tell you what, man, when Kirk's sitting back there as just a human jugs machine firing it down the field, like they can still beat anybody here. So again, kind of an asymmetric matchup, but a really fun matchup between two teams that could very easily be playing in January.
Another game that's gotten a lot more fun over the last month. If you looked at this game 4 weeks ago, didn't look like it was going to be a good matchup. Now, I think it really is. This is a balanced matchup. Bo Nix's performance against the Chiefs showed that he can lead a functional passing game, not flashy, functional, against a very good defense. Spags, we talk him up every week on this show. He's one of the best. Nix in that passing attack had him on the ropes. Should have beat him. That is a big step for Bo Nix in this passing offense. The rushing game is effective but not flashy. Sensing a theme here. Effective but not flashy. This team on offense is solid but not spectacular. And that's really good for a unit led by a rookie QB. That's not backhanded praise. That is a really good place for them to be halfway through their first season with Bo Nix as their signal caller. Defense, as you mentioned, on the other hand, is an absolute bully. In 3 of the last 4 games, and I'm excluding the Ravens, we just talked about them, they're a juggernaut on offense. This team has allowed 10, 14, and 14 points. Now, they gave a bunch to the Ravens, but that's the Ravens. They're the 5th best all season in yards allowed and the 4th best scoring defense overall in the league. This is a very solid unit that this team leans on. Absolutely. It is their rock, and the offense is coming along to match. That makes them more balanced. Atlanta, on the other hand, what is it with the bird team? Seems like this is a theme. The offense is really good. The defense has some holes in it. So the offense in Atlanta, which we were waiting for, everybody in Atlanta was waiting for as well, for this offense with all this talent to hit its stride under Cousins. Looked a little rough at the start, but they have found that stride. They are 13th best in points per game, top 10 in EPA per play, 7th in yards per pass play. Just outside the top 10 in rush yards per play. They're 11th and EPA per rush, 12th. Darnell Mooney has the 6th most receiving yards in the league. And strangely enough, Drake London is 6th in the league in catches. So 6 is a big number for Atlanta. Bijan finally hitting all that potential that everybody saw in him coming out of Texas. 4th in total yards from scrimmage for the entire league. That is exactly what Atlanta wants out of him. Zach Robinson is pushing all the right buttons in Atlanta, and it's probably going to get him some head coaching looks in the offseason. I would be very surprised if that didn't happen based on this performance. The D you mentioned, though, struggling to create pass rush, last in the league with 9 sacks. Not what we thought we were going to see when they traded for Matthew Judon, but that is the reality, and that's going to be a problem with the Broncos passing game, again, hitting their own stride. Atlanta's going to have to put some pressure on them, and really, Atlanta's going to lean on their offense. The Broncos are going to lean on their defense. It's going to make it a really interesting game.
And I love these asymmetric matchups, right? Because it's strength on strength, and you just see who wins. Now, you could argue this is kind of stoppable force meets movable object on one side, and then unstoppable force meets unmovable object on the other side. So I don't really know how that's going to shake out, but I do know it makes for pretty darn good television. I want to highlight Bo, though, because, I said he's been playing better, but I want to talk about how much better he's been playing. So over the season, he's got the 6th most off-targeting completions in the NFL among all starting quarterbacks. Accuracy has been not just a problem, it's been like a 5-alarm fire over the first probably month and a half of the year. Like, he just, for whatever reason, his accuracy completely went down the shitter, especially compared to what he was at Oregon, which was exceptionally accurate. Like, yes, there was a lot of manufactured completions, but like, he was accurate at Oregon. His ball placement was great. And I mean at all levels of the field. Like, again, they didn't throw it down the field as much as Penix at Washington, but like, when he threw it down the field, he was pretty good at it, right? Compared to the first month and a half of this year, he just couldn't hit anything. And I was like, what the hell's going on? And we had a lot of criticisms of the coaching staff for having these ultra wordy play calls. Like, he was struggling to get out in the huddle, and they had clock issues and had to burn some timeouts because of it. You and I have always been critical of Carmichael, and Peyton's offense just kind of seemed outdated and stale and needlessly difficult for a young quarterback, right? But clearly there's been some changes in the process. I've been seeing them run a lot more no huddle. I've been seeing them run a lot more play action. I've been seeing them try to, I don't want to say catering the offense is the wrong word, dumbing it down is the wrong word. But it feels like they understood, like, hey, we did too much too quickly. This is not Drew Brees, who can get out there and spit out 4 paragraphs, before the headsets turn off at 20 seconds to go. Like, this is a young guy. Let's not simplify, but streamline it. And let's make it a more executable passing game. And since then, over the last 4 to 5 weeks, he is 76% adjusted completion percentage. That's top 10 in the NFL. 94.6 rating. Very solid. Not amazing. It's not like Jared Goff, not Lamar, but it's very solid. It's enough. He has 5 touchdowns, only 1 turnover-worthy play. TWP rate is 0.6%, which basically means he doesn't make bad decisions. 228 yards a game. Again, solid, not spectacular. And like I said, 33% play action rate has really, really helped him out too. There's some offenses in the league that don't help their quarterback out at all with play action. Atlanta is oddly one of them. They're at 14% play action, which is like, boy, Atlanta does one thing. Like, they literally do one thing, and it's put Kirk in the shotgun or put him in pistol, and they throw the ball. Like, they don't try to deceive you at all. Like, he is back there. He is chucking it. Denver has incorporated a lot more play action. It's helped Bo out a lot. But I want to emphasize that the Bo Nix you see now is not the Bo Nix that we really heavily criticized in September. And I love to see that growth. I love to see that progression, development, whatever buzzword you want to use, because all of a sudden this Denver team that we're like, I don't know if this is going to work, is now looking like a playoff team because they got better. And usually the best teams are the ones that can get better while they're playing.
I would agree. And I think calling out the offensive approach, it really is see how much a rookie quarterback can handle. People relate that to drinking through a fire hose. And this is, the firemen being the coaches standing at the fire hose with that valve going, okay, we got to pull that back a little bit. It's still going to be the same amount of water, but we're going to give him a little bit less every week that he has to master. And that's worked. And the best coaches are making the adjustments that work. We just saw Shane Waldron get fired because he wouldn't make adjustments. He sort of did the wrong thing and didn't rein in an offense that had run out of control. Pete Carmichael, on the other hand, went, and I think in cahoots with Sean Payton, they probably sat down and said, all right, what are we doing that's not helping? Let's cut that part out and leave the rest and see how it goes. And the results have been great.
It just feels like, just when you're watching the broadcast, like, I encourage Broncos fans, watch the broadcast, and you can see how much faster the operation is now, right? Like, he's not sitting in the huddle for 15 seconds spitting out a 10-word play call canned to another 10-word play call. Like, we're running this. This is it. Let's fucking go. If I get a bad look, fine, I'll call a timeout. But like they don't bog him down with just the weight of the entire offense on his shoulders now, which again is what Peyton's used to because he had Russ, who was a veteran. He had Breeze, who played forever. Like Sean Payton is not used to this. Pete Carmichael was not used to this. So they kind of had to adjust their approach. They had to adjust their play calling. They had to adjust the types of calls they use. Like their motion percentage has gone down. Why? That adds words. like they are doing their best to just make the picture simple, and credit to them for that. One quick note, and then we'll get right back to the show. You guys are very familiar with Manscaped at this point because they've supported us forever. But they did just release a brand new addition to their grooming line that you might be interested in called the Chairman Pro, which is an old school electric foil shaver that can give you a professional shave right at home. You can use either the skin-safe 4-blade foil for a smooth finish, or if you want a stubble look, they have multiple options for the stubble trimmer to give you either a 1 to 2 day look or a 3 to 4 day look, depending on your preference. It's also waterproof, so you can use it in the shower if you want, and it makes it easier to clean too because you can just rinse it under the sink. It also, of course, has an LED spotlight so you can see every hair you're trying to shave, and it has up to 75 minutes of runtime. So if you're in need of a new shaver to maintain your stubble or to have a fresh and smooth face every single day, check out the Chairman Pro at Manscaped. And of course, check out everything else they have to offer too, whether it's body trimmers, lotion, shave gels, nose hair trimmers. I mean, you name it, they have it when it comes to grooming. You can see it all at manscaped.com, and if you use promo code BOOTLEG, you'll also get a 20% off discount and free shipping on your order. Again, that is manscaped.com, promo code BOOTLEG. That will give you 20% off and free shipping on whatever you get. Thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring today's show, and with that, let's get back to it. Now, next one, Chiefs-Bills. Huge game. And everybody knew it. Every time the schedule gets released in May, people circle this one. It's the first one they look at. When are they playing? Is it a primetime game? Is it not a primetime game? How late into the season is it? Is any of them coming off a bye? Is it pre-bye or post-bye? This is one of the marquee regular matchups of the year, every single year. And I equate it to, Peyton versus Tom. When we'd see it every single year, because that game was going to determine who's going where in January. Are we hosting? Are you hosting? You're going to run into each other. But this game determines where. And what's interesting about this matchup is it feels like it's two very similar teams colliding. And we highlighted this so many times throughout the last 6 months. When we did the Bills offseason preview, and a lot of people were skeptical about Buffalo going into the year. You and I were not. You and I were like, hey, they're still going to win the division. Miami was a trendy pick. The Jets were a trendy pick. We still pick Buffalo because we're like, hey, yes, they've lost a lot of veteran leaders, but they were already really deep. Like, they had a bunch of young talent waiting in the wings to fill this. They had a really good draft. And the style of offense that they were building with Joe Brady, it's very similar to the style that the Chiefs won back-to-back Super Bowls with, right? It was about efficiency. It was about distributing the ball, getting yards after the catch, having a strong running game, and just not making mistakes that dig yourself into a hole. Like, it's not about bombing it down the field anymore, like Buffalo was a couple years ago, or like the Chiefs were in 2018, 2019. It's about just getting completions, getting yards, don't fuck up. And so you have two very similar teams colliding in that regard. Two teams that made trades for veteran number ones because they needed just that one extra guy to beat man coverage. And what really strikes me about it, even though the Chiefs have the best record in the NFL, it kind of feels like the Bills are better at it this year. Like, it kind of feels like this particular style of play that comes down to efficiency, your quarterback making 3 to 4 plays a game that are the difference, playing strong defense, playing strong special teams. It kind of feels like the Bills are the better version. But the Chiefs have the better record. They are right next to each other in terms of defensive success rate and defensive EPA per play allowed. I mean, literally right next to each other in the scatter plot at 11th and 12th. You could basically interchange these two defenses with each other, and they're going to be roughly equivalently effective. Now, the Bills have a slightly better offense, which is why I say they're a slightly better version of the same team, because they have a higher offensive success rate and a higher EPA per play. They're better at getting explosives, and they're better at just, continuously kind of marching ever forward and setting up manageable third downs for themselves. The Chiefs were the best in the league at that the first 6-7 weeks of the season, but the Bills have since outpaced them since acquiring Amari. But again, we're talking about roughly the same template here in terms of methodical, efficient offense, suffocating defense. They're not top 5 in anything, but they're top 12 in everything. Like, they are absolutely top 12 in everything, both of these teams. So I look at them, and I think the Bills are going to win because they're a slightly better version of it. But at the same time, the Chiefs are undefeated for a reason. They're undefeated because when push comes to shove and they need to make one play, they're going to do it. And they're the best team in the league at doing that. I mean, shit, they should have lost last week and they didn't. So I will be picking Buffalo here, but I also acknowledge if you pick the Chiefs to win this by like 6 and just said, well, it's the Chiefs, I would understand.
2 stalwarts in the league, 2 very evenly matched teams, not only in style, but also in execution. So all the stuff we're going to be all the threads we're going to be pulling at here are really splitting hairs, because what we're really looking for here is the slightest advantages to get those teams out and get them a win. So Bills still a very good top 10 scoring defense. I want to highlight 2 of their corners because I think 2 of their corners are playing exceptional football. Teron Johnson's one of the best slot defenders in the league right now. Pass rating allowed just 74.8. He's supporting versus the run. He is a template sort of nickel slot player. If you're looking at, hey, what do we need to run a lot of nickel? Teron Johnson is the guy you want in that role, and the Bills have him there. And then Christian Benford's been playing on the outside really well all year. Again, passer rating allowed just slightly higher at 76.7. He's only allowed 118 yards and 1 TD all year while picking off 2 passes. And a lot of people don't know his name. That's wrong. Learn his name. He's playing very, very well, and McDermott's leaning on him. It's not like they're protecting him. It's not like they're giving him a lot of help. They're just saying you need to perform, and he is. Rush defense, still an issue. And again, when I say an issue, you talked about all the overall defensive stats. If we have to split hairs, the place where the Bills defense is the weakest is rushing. And Casey's going to press on that and press hard. You hit the opponent where they're weak or weaker. And Casey is very good at that. Pacheco might be back. He's practicing. I bet he's coming back for this game just because of who he is. If they let him on the field, he's going to play and play super hard. You're not going to know he was out. I think Joe Brady on the Bills side is going to take some cues from the Broncos last week. I think the Bills tight ends are going to try and press down the field more in the seams. I don't think it's going to be a volume thing. I don't think they're going to get a lot of catches doing that, but they might get a few big ones. We saw Troutman have success on 1 big ball last week, and the Bills have 2 good tight ends who are both better than Troutman. They're going to try and get those guys involved. Brady's looking at that and saying, again, how can I poke holes in what is a very good defensive unit that these 2 are really familiar with each other too. We just need to say that. They know they're going to play each other. They know they're going to be at the top of the AFC. They've played each other a bunch. They're used to the strengths. They're used to the weaknesses. And this is like sort of 2 neighborhood, tough guys that walk by each other every day, and then 3-4 times a year they mix it up, but they know what's coming from the other side, which makes this rivalry even more interesting. The Chiefs might get a big break with Keon Coleman out. He didn't practice on Wednesday. We'll see if he plays.
It's not just Keon, by the way. Kincaid and Amari also DNP. So if there's one reason why you feel confident in the Chiefs, it's probably that. Again, we don't know if they're not going to play, but it's scary.
I'll tell you what, if all 3 of those guys don't play, Kansas City wins this game. Yeah, Casey wins this game. Hands down. Again, we're talking about, tenths of a percentage point here with these 2 teams. If you take out more than half of the Bills' stars on offense, it's going to be Kansas City's game, I think. The Chiefs are going to look to squeeze Shakir and Cook, especially if those guys don't play, and make the rest of the offense, whatever's left, try and win it. And that would be a tall task. Could Josh do it by himself? Yes. But when he's pressed into that role, he plays his least best football. When Josh has to be Superman to win the game, he's capable of it, but he's also capable of more mistakes at that point. And again, in a very tight contest where we think it's going to be incredibly evenly matched. And oh, by the way, Patrick Mahomes is one of the quarterbacks. That isn't the ideal situation for the Bills. Now, if 2 or 3 of those guys end up playing through some miracle, we're getting that very balanced contest, and this is must-see TV, period.
The one schematic oddity that I want to highlight here that might have a big impact on this game, regardless of who's playing for Buffalo and who's sitting out, is how effective Josh is against cover 0, which doesn't necessarily require your best receiver be on the field. Like 0 is 0. It's kind of its own thing. But it's about how good Josh is against 0, or rather how good the Bills are against 0, and how often the Chiefs call it. So Josh has 17 passing touchdowns this year. 10 of them are against cover 0. I don't know why teams still keep calling it against them, but the Chiefs call it a lot. Like we're talking about a third down rate of 12%, which is a lot. Like they're going to see multiple snaps of 0 this game, including on third down. It's kind of a situational call for KC just because, not that they're trying to get a sack on third down. A sack would be nice. The reason you call 0 is to force a quick throw, right? It's to force, a ball to go underneath so we can rally and tackle. It's not about getting a sack. It's about getting pressure so that they don't have time to throw it down the field. Well, the Bills are the Bills, right? So they have a quarterback who, A, can get out of that pressure from the free guy coming off the edge and then make a throw down the field anyway because he's Josh. Or B, a common adjustment that the Bills are known for doing against 0 is if Josh sees it pre-snap, he just gives a little signal to a tight end or a slot receiver or whoever to be a late add in protection so that we get numbers, right? So if you're bringing 7, we all of a sudden get 7 with a late addition. We get 7 on 7. You got one guy covering grass. He's covering nobody in no man's land. And then we just run a seam behind you and Josh throws it up and we score. Like they've done that more than literally any other team. And they're going against a defense with Spagnuolo that loves to call 0. So it's very plausible, considering over half of their passing touchdowns this year have come off of that scenario. It's plausible that Spags goes against his own instincts and just doesn't call it. And if Spags doesn't call 0 and doesn't give the Bills the opportunity to get that explosive play that they've relied on in literally every single game, now we could see a potential, I don't want to call it momentum shift, denial of momentum shift. How about that, right? If we don't give them the opportunity to punch us in the chin, they can't punch us in the chin. So I want to see Spags not call it. I want to see him not call 0, not really blitz at all. Just let our guys cover, let them rally and tackle, let Chris Jones, rely on Chris Jones, I should say, to get some crucial pass rush wins for us and do his Chris Jones thing. And just not give Josh an opportunity. Like that might be the key here. Again, will that happen? I have no idea. but just kind of looking at these two teams and how they match up, they're so close that might literally be the difference between winning and losing.
And it's not give him that opportunity, right? Don't give him 0 because it's the chance for a quick win. And as we've seen a bunch this season, you said 10 times, a quick score. And it's going to be hard for Spags to lay off. That's a fastball for him. And to not call it, I agree with you, is probably the better strategy. Sit back, clog the passing lanes, give him a lot of different coverage looks to look at, change those up as Spags is great at doing, and make them, quote unquote, matriculate the ball down the field. Give them, 12, 13, 14 play drives, as many decisions as you can. Don't give him the one opportunity because at this point, he's probably waiting for it. He's like, man, they call 0. I'm pretty good against 0. We've got answers this year. I love seeing it because as long as I can identify it, I know what I'm doing, and I've been doing it at a pretty high rate. And if he's waiting for that all game and he never sees it, that's going to be a source of frustration.
I'm going to press you here to make a pick. My pick is if 2 of the 3 play between Keon, Amari, and Kincaid, I'm going Buffalo. If 1 or fewer play, I'm going KC. How about you?
I think that's completely fair. As long as we get the if for the offensive pieces, because that is a huge swing in what is a tight game. If they have most of those guys playing, I'm with you. I think Buffalo probably wins this one because, again, the Chiefs are undefeated, but you look at the chances where they could have been defeated this year, and there's more than one. There's multiple times this could be a 4-loss team pretty easily. Like, you don't have to connect the dots very hard to say they easily could be a non-undefeated team. So everybody that's just sort of leaning on statistics and looking at the record and saying, well, how are you picking against a team that hasn't lost this year? Well, they've been pretty darn close, and Buffalo's a really good football team, but they're going to need the offensive firepower. If they have it, I think they might push KC over the line.
Now, final matchup of the week, Bengals-Chargers, two teams that almost beat KC, but didn't because nobody's managed to do it this year. This game did not get flexed out of Sunday Night Football for one very important reason. And that's because if you're looking at the quarterback play in this game, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, this is probably the best quarterback matchup of the entire week. And I would say maybe of the last month, because both of these quarterbacks are playing out of their fucking minds. Herbert, since week 7, again, their bye was in week 5, then they came back week 6. Since week 7, their last 4 games, 13 big-time throws, most in the NFL by like 4. 0 turnover-worthy plays. So he's had the most big-time throws, literally has not made a mistake in terms of a turnover-worthy play the entire month. That is nuts. Burrow, if you're looking at him, he does have turnover-worthy plays. Like, he does kind of say, fuck it, Jamar's down there somewhere. Routinely, he has 4 of those in particular, but he has the second most touchdowns over the last month with 12, and he has the third most yards over that span. So, yes, he's been more careless, but boy, he has been outrageously productive, and he's made some pretty ridiculous throws in his own right. So I look at this matchup. You have elite quarterback against elite quarterback. The difference in it is the quality of the team around them. Burrow's got the receivers. He's got the skill position talent. Herbert has the defense, and probably you could argue the offensive line. The tackles are a lot better than the interior, but considering how terrible the Bengals pass rush is, that's kind of all they need for this one. God, I almost kind of feel bad for Trey Hendrickson.
You mean more than the rest of the year?
He's all they got, and he's got to go against Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt this week. And it's like, all right, okay.
Pack a lunch.
Let me try to do this by myself. Yeah. So, again, it's a very interesting matchup because you have two quarterbacks with wildly different teams around them. They each have their own strengths and weaknesses. But as far as like complete team, I would probably say the Chargers are the more complete team. But I mean, Cincy, like you get Jamar going, anything can happen.
Interestingly enough, Jamar getting going has happened in fits and spurts this season. You look at his overall total and you might think, oh man, he's crushing it every week. He's not. He'll have a couple off weeks or 3 off weeks, and then he'll have 258 yards or 141. And he had that last week. So the Bengals rocket launcher passing game coming off hanging 421 yards on that Ravens pass defense. We've talked about how bad they are, but Burrow is also playing at a high level. It was a very bad convergence for the Ravens. The Chargers secondary is playing very, very well. We highlighted them a few weeks ago on the podcast as one of the units that's playing the best in the league and kind of one of the secret heroes that's not being talked about, right? And so that matchup in itself is one of those asymmetric matchups you're talking about that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Cincinnati's still struggling in the regular running game. They miss Mixon a lot. They'd love to have him. And this could be a week to get it going again because Minter's D is lockdown versus the pass, but does allow the 8th most yards per rush in the league. So a sneaky chance for Cincinnati to find some balance, which they really haven't had. It's going to be difficult, but it's always difficult in the NFL. If they have a place where they can make a little bit more hay in the running game, this might be it. On the Bengals defense, they've played better in recent weeks, but that's relative. They were terrible in the early going. We called them out routinely over the first 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and said, man, if they don't get it going. Now, they have gotten it going a little bit, but their run defense is going to be tested. They allow the 6th least rush yards in the league at 4.2. But Roman has the 6th highest run percentage in the league, and it's more battering ram than scalpel. It's about volume, not necessarily efficiency, but they are going to do it. He is not going to shy away from that. On the Chargers offense side, we got to call out Justin Herbert. You said the last 4 games. I'm going to go even tighter. I'm going to go the last 3 games because I'm going to posit that this might be the best football we've ever seen Herbert play in a stretch. His rating for the last 3 games, 111, 125, 123. His adjusted yards per attempt, last 3 games, 9.9, 11.9, 10.2. Touchdown to interception ratio over those 3 games, 5-0. He has come alive. He has found his role. He understands what Roman and Harbaugh expect from him, and he is executing, as you said, at an incredibly high level with no mistakes. That's not something we've been able to say over a 3 or 4 week stretch for Justin Herbert, maybe ever. And if this continues, the conversation around Justin Herbert as a quarterback is going to sort of reascend to where it was when he was a rookie and he had that great season and everybody had the highest expectations for him going forward. And then there were just a lot of ups and downs, and there were a lot of low lows in that period. Started off slowly this year. They were leaning much more on the run. He was still finding his fit in this offense. It feels like that's clicked, and those numbers support that over the last 3 weeks.
And people got to remember, like, he was going through multiple injuries at the start of the year. He had a high ankle sprain. Actually, I think he had injuries in both. Is either both ankles, or I think one was a foot, one was I can't remember. But he had, let's just say, lower body extremities were in trouble for the first month of the year. Like, they desperately needed the bye because at one point Slater was hurt, Alt was hurt, Justin was hurt, Palmer was hurt, like everybody was hurt, right? And it was shaky. It was really shaky. They could run the ball well, but they really couldn't do anything else. And then they had the bye. They got healthier over the last month. Now Justin's like totally fine. And you can tell. It's like some of the open field moves that he made against Tennessee. I was like, oh God. Like,
he's back.
He's back. He's feeling good. Like, that ain't Toradol. That's just feeling good. And like, I really can't recall him ever playing better football than this. He's had better stats than this, but he's never played better football. And this was something that we talked about, basically all summer long, as well as in the preseason, where the goal when they brought in Jim and they brought in Greg and they invested in the offensive line, they invested in a running back. The goal was to have Justin do more by doing less. Like, that was the entire goal, right? Was to design an offense where the quarterback could be more successful based on not having to do everything. Now, they'll still have him, make 4 or 5 plays a game, either with his legs or with his arm. Again, that's where the big time throws come from. Like, that's on average, 3 a game? Like, we need you to make 3 big time throws a game and don't turn it over. They don't throw it as much as like the statistically gaudy teams, but when they do throw it, they're more efficient than anybody. And that's the point. That is the entire point of this offense, is to make Justin Herbert better by not having him have to do everything like previous Chargers teams. And it's led to the record they've got. Like, yeah, they've beat up on some really bad teams, but I mean, shit, the schedule's the schedule. And you could argue that they should be even better than they are right now. Again, like, they dropped a couple games early because everybody was banged up. Like, if they had to play those games again right now, they probably would win them. Like, this is a 6-3 team that could very easily be 7-2. Dare I say 8-1? Like, you could easily argue like they could be an 8-1 team right now. So it's one of the hottest ball clubs in the entire NFL, and they're going against a Bengals team that I get frustrated when I watch the Bengals. I'm not gonna lie. Just to go on a little bit of a tangent.
What would a bootleg episode be without a tangent?
Bengals fans can correct me if I'm wrong. You guys don't enjoy watching this either, do you? Like, I mean, you enjoy watching Joe Burrow make crazy plays and Jamar make crazy plays. Like, you enjoy that. Hendrickson getting sacks. The rest of it you don't enjoy watching, right? Because I don't enjoy watching it, because I see a football team that outside of their stars should be way better than they are. Like, way better. And I feel like this is going to be looked at, by Bengals fans, not as a lost season, but as a season that, like, they should be in contention for the first seed right now. They should be in contention for the AFC North right now. And it feels like this is going to be a what if year, right? Because T's going to be gone. Hendrickson might be gone. You're going to have Joe and you're going to have Jamar. But like Mixon's already, like, what are you going to have to show for the last 4-year stretch? You're going to have one Super Bowl appearance and you're going to have, a couple deep playoff runs. But like, you're going to look at this team, or rather you're going to look at this roster and you're going to be like, oh, we had him. And we're 4-5. Like, I get so frustrated watching this team because the stars make amazing plays and then the rest of the team just shits the bed. Like 60% of the time. And I don't enjoy watching it. Like, I enjoy watching their star players. I don't enjoy watching the rest of the team. Like, I don't know how Bengals fans do this every week because they just find ways to lose. They're like the opposite of the Chargers, who find ways to win generally when they're healthy. Like, the Bengals will just invent new ways to lose games. Like, what are we doing here?
I feel like we're wasting a lot of what Joe Burrow has to offer and does offer. Like, Joe's out there playing his heart out. There was a lot of questions around the beginning of the year. And is the arm healed? And is he going to come back? Like, all that, that's all gone. Like, again, you led off this segment talking about Joe Burrow and his efficiency, and he's playing amazing football. If you watch Bengals games, as we do, I know a lot of people don't. Yes, they're frustrating, but it's not because Joe's letting anybody down. And if Bengals fans are going to have a regret at the end of this season or in the end of the last 2 or 3 seasons, it's, man, we had a young Joe Burrow who was out there carving it up every single week, playing at one of the highest levels in the entire league, and we couldn't surround him with enough talent to make a push for a championship. Like, we've made deep runs largely on his shoulders. Without him, we wouldn't have been anywhere close. We're going to feel like that was sort of wasted youth, wasted effort, and that's a tough thing to stomach as a franchise. Not saying they won't get there down the road or right the wrongs and surround him with enough talent to make that run. He certainly is capable of that. We'll see if the rest of the Bengals can come along and get at his level.
Again, I think the main reason why they could win this game is because like their star core I'd put up against anybody. Between Burrow and Jamar and T and Trey, like I'd put that up against anybody. It's just the rest of the team isn't there. Like, the Chargers have overall a better team, even if they don't have the better stars. Which, by the way, I am going to be at this game. So if you're a Bengals fan or a Chargers fan and you're going to be at this game, let me know because I'll be there as well. It's tough to get a Sunday night ticket, but I asked the Chargers, like, we think we can swing one for you. So I'll be there by myself. So if you want to grab a drink and hang out, just let me know. I'll be there. But yeah, I really am looking forward to this game just because I know how entertaining it's going to be. But at the same time, I also know how frustrating it's going to be. Like, I'm just preparing myself to be mad about it on behalf of Bengals fans. Because I'm like, oh, how are they going to fuck this one up? I can't wait to see. I just know it's going to happen somehow. Oh, man. All right. If you guys enjoyed this show, again, we haven't really done like a game preview episode in a while, but if you guys enjoyed this, let us know down in the comments, or however you happen to consume it, whether it's on YouTube or Spotify or your favorite podcast listening service. I want to thank Manscaped. I want to thank Underdog. I want to thank our patrons. Reminder, if you are a patron, we're putting up a bonus game. We're talking Hawks Niners over on the Patreon. That should be out either the same day this one comes out or the day after. We're not 100% sure yet, but we're doing a bonus game over on the Patreon for all of our patrons. Also want to thank Homage, our clothing provider. And I also want to thank all of our executive producers for Bootleg Football, Fitzy, Andrew, Connor, Eichen, Liam, and Mike over on the Patreon. Once again, if you're still here, appreciate you. And with that, we'll see you soon.